Welp, here we are. It's Romania Black, episode 33 of Revolutionary Girl Utena, and I'm not going to lie to you, I've held off on watching this for quite some time, so yeah, episode 32 may not be the least quality episode of the series, but it was the roughest to get through by far. I think it was because it was most frustrating. I think 30 and 31 were difficult in themselves. But 32, I had like expectations of hope, and then those expectations of hope were quickly dashed. And I think that's what frustrated me more, was that I had all these hopeful ideas of how we were going to get out of that rut from episodes 30 and 31, and nope, we're still here. Anyway, so I've got some comments I want to talk about before we dive into this, but Ruffsville, population Romania, and all of us watching this show right now. I put out on Discord, I was like, the last several episodes have been rough, and I'm just going to persevere and have patience and try to have faith, but my faith was really waning last week, so it's going to take some staunch, I have a feeling that it's not just going to be like everything's fixed this episode. No, it's probably going to get worse, and so I'm trying to like brace myself for that. But I told the moderator, I was like, yeah, this is really hard, and they were like, yeah, they said that there had been people that were questioning whether they should tell me about episodes 30 and 31, and I'm glad that they didn't, because I wanted that reaction to be genuine and that discussion to be genuine, and it wasn't that it wasn't anything worse than Berserk, I'll tell you that right now. So it was definitely manageable. It was just the frustration of it all, especially episode 32. Episode 32 really, I had hopes for, and they were dashed extraordinarily, and I feel it's going to keep happening for the time being. So awesome. And then the moderator was like, well, you know what? Sometimes great series have moments like this. And I'm like, yeah, I just really wish that we'd stop having these girls assaulted as a character growth moment. If we could stop doing that, that'd be great. And we talked about that, the fact that this creator of the series is a man. Not to say that men don't get assaulted, they do. And it's not right either way. I guess for me, having a series with moments that are this rough, created by people that, to my knowledge, haven't experienced that, and when you're someone that has experienced it watching it, you kind of just, I did this in Berserk. I went back to Banana Fish as an example. There are characters that are assaulted in Banana Fish, and the way that the creator handles it, it is gritty, it is real, it is horrifying, but the difference is in Banana Fish, there's someone for that person to be comforted by, and to empathize with, and to work through their grief. Here in Utena, the most frustrating part is that the characters that are being assaulted and the characters that are being preyed upon, they don't have anybody to go to. They don't have a helper. They don't have a friend that they can lean on. And while we'll talk about this in the comments, that can be relatable to a lot of people, for someone that's experienced it, you kind of also want there to be that helper there, right? To show them that there is light at the end of the tunnel. And I'm not going to get emotional before I even start the damn episode, but it's true, right? So anyway, to get back to the Little Prince, which we talked about way back, like episode 13 or 14, I had a student in my English class that we had to do prompts of like, I want you to tell me like your favorite story or your favorite character. And the student, I kid you not, in my class this last week said, my favorite piece of literature is The Little Prince by Antoine de Saint-Exupéry. I don't know how to pronounce their last name, but it says, I consider the main character, the Little Prince, one of the protagonists in the story. And this is their words. Now, if you've read the story, you can interpret how accurate this is, because it seems a little different than the description we did back in those episodes. It says he left his distant planet with his only friend, Rose the flower, which is different than the scenario that I got, so I was like, okay, and voyaged the universe, ending up on planet Earth. His character represents the open-mindedness of children, which reminds us it's okay to reconnect with our inner child and appreciate the simple beauty of life. Which made me think that a lot of Utena is dealing with the loss of that innocence from our childhood, and these characters are being disconnected from that open-mindedness and innocence of being a child. And so it seems like it does relate a lot to the story. And so I didn't want to go back through the Little Prince synopsis yet. I want to wait till towards the end of the series to go back through it, because I feel like we still have a lot left to go. But I thought I'd be remiss not to mention what my student had brought up in class. Learwin, for episode 29, says Ruka's method of trying... this commenter had a very long comment about episode 29 with Ruka, but I really, really liked it, so I wanted to read it verbatim to you all, but it's really good. Ruka's method of trying to save Juri is to have her participate in the duels and win, thereby obtaining the power of miracles. The sole purpose behind Ruka hurting Shiori and tormenting Juri is to make sure Juri realizes that only by dueling and winning can she change the dreadful situation that she's in, thereby igniting her will to fight. Which does bring to question, Utena has been dueling people and winning, but she's not really using any power of miracles because she doesn't think that she needs to. And so that could be a reason why we're not getting to the castle or on the horses. Because she doesn't think that she needs to use any power of miracles. So maybe this whole situation with Akio will eventually inspire her to win a duel for a reason? You tell me. Don't tell me. I don't want to be spoiled. But what is the essence of salvation? Ruka creates tragedy and forces both Juri and Shiori to endure it. Such salvation is not equal. It is salvation imposed by the Savior upon the saved. Even though Ruka may not expect Juri to repay him with love for this salvation, subconsciously he still hopes that Juri might be grateful or even remember him for the rest of her life after his death. But this expectation is still selfish. So yeah, we talked about that in episode 29, and Ruka kind of like makes himself, the savior in this moment, but what was the whole point of it? And we talked about that in the episode. During his duel with Juri, Ruka says that miracles require sacrifice, and it's Juri's sacrifice that allows Shiori to achieve a miracle. However, what Ruka fails to see is that Juri's sacrifice does not bring Shiori a miracle, but rather pain and distortion. Yeah, Shiori ended up not being happy at all by the end of that first episode with her in the duel, right? So then we cut back to this episode. Ruka's fundamental problem is the issue of the prince spirit. Now, the mods approved this, so I'm assuming that it's okay, but they talked about how the white rose that we've seen on the screen symbolizes the prince spirit, which I hadn't quite taken into account, but I guess maybe that's just their theory. We'll have to see till the end of the series if that proves anything, but we have talked about how Ruka does embody a lot of prince-like behaviors. And he tries to be like this figure of saving, Shiori and Juri as well. But this is why we see Ruka fail and why Juri loses the duel in episode 29, and why Juri ultimately achieves salvation. It's crucial to note that Juri is saved by herself, not by Ruka, not by Utena, who shattered her pendant, or even through Utena directly facilitated, though she directly facilitated this. The breaking of the pendant is a symbol. It signifies that Juri is finally willing to open her heart, face her feelings, and see the real Shiori. And in that moment, they didn't talk about this in the comment, but I totally agree with that, in that Juri, she just pulled the rose off herself. Utena didn't actually knock the rose off, Juri took it off herself, which maybe is why she's able to move on, not through Ruka's help, not through Utena's help, but because she helps herself. And that's kind of been the thing I've been saying quite some time, that Utena needs to save herself and that Anthe needs to save herself, but neither of them seem willing to do it, and neither of them are helping each other, which is, again, is why things are so frustrating, because it's like, I see the solution, but none of the characters are doing it, and it's like, the most important point here is that only a person can save themselves. Exactly. Which is what we've been talking about, but these characters aren't doing it. They're not saving themselves, and that's what's so frustrating. Ironically, it was Utena, who had no intention of saving Juri, who shattered the shell encasing this twisted relationship and enabled the transformation with it. Which, that's kind of been Utena's thing. Utena, throughout the duels, has been initiating change within the characters. It's just, girl can help everybody else except herself. Which is so frustrating. But then Xanacho says, for episode 30, as hard as these episodes are to get through, I have a lot of respect for the show as a shoujo series whose target audience is teenage girls. Hey, shoujo can be darker and more twisted than any shonen wishes it was on any given day. Just saying. Making their villain a man like Akio. I've seen multiple fans talk about how the show helped them recognize and unpack their own grooming and abuse, which I do appreciate the show having the balls to do a character like Akio, and we've talked about him in the past, so I do respect that. A lot of shoujo shows have an age gap romance that goes completely unquestioned and romanticized, So it means a lot to have a show that says this charming, attractive man pursuing our young protagonist, he's the villain. His kindness is a front. The romantic framing is a lie. Utena may not see it, but you, the audience, are being shown that he's killing her light. And that's probably what's the hardest part, is that we can see it happening and we know it's happening, like the lights going out one by one, but it's like we want her to do something about it. And that's probably the hardest part as well. But I'm not going to cry before starting the even episode. Oh, hurts my heart. Anyway, so Oliver Shajado, oh my God, I'm so frustrated already, says, I don't know if you've noticed it, but even the jingle during the intermission has changed to a softer piece. I had not noticed that, but now I'm going to have to pay attention to it. A Revolutionary Girl Utena's is one of the few shows that portrays these power dynamics in a different light. The director's commentary is rather short and straight to the point for episode 30. The Barefoot Girl. I decided to live true to myself. Living true to myself means living as an alien. However, even the alien craft we call UFOs sometimes lose control and crash into things. I'm not talking about the Shadow Girls here. Yeah, because the Shadow Girls have been crashing into their ship into the Dick Tower for several episodes now. But my thing is, I feel like I would be more apt to not be so frustrated if Utena realized that she herself is the alien, that she likes Anthe, that she's living true to herself, or if Anthe would start trying to live true to herself with the obvious feelings she has towards Utena, and then if both of them crashed and burned after admitting those feelings and pursuing them, I wouldn't feel so frustrated, but neither of them are even admitting that they have those feelings or recognizing that they're there when we, the audience, can see them. So the fact that they're not recognizing them makes us, the audience, wonder, are they ever going to? And that's part of that frustration as well. It's like I want you to just be open about it and come to that realization. And then if you crash and burn, we'll be able to root for you. But right now, it's hard to root for Anthe when she's just not doing anything. And in fact, is being yandere and weird. And then with Utena, it's hard because she's not being open. It's almost like she's regressing. So it's like, it's just frustrating. But you know what? We have booze in this cup, and we have a dream, and that dream is to not be frustrated with Revolutionary Girl Utena this week. So thank you all for the comments. Thank you all for the kind words. I appreciate them very, very much, but I'm excited to see where this all goes to. So we're not going to waste any more time. We're going to dive right into Revolutionary Girl Utena, episode 33, and just see what we get. And we're going to do that here in 3, 2, 1, and let's go. I don't know how long this is going to be because I don't know how much I can get through, if I'm being very honest with you. Because this hit really close to home. Anyway, so, what I want to do is just focus on what we can and, talk about what we can. So, we didn't do the whole intro like a fairy tale book anymore because this was not like a fairy tale book. This was fucking real. Very real. And there's a lot of stylistic choices that are made in this episode that are very effective. What I don't want to read in the comments is somebody being like, this is my favorite episode, because it is not mine. and if it's your favorite episode, that's good. Good for you. Good for you. But other than the technical aspects, and I know some people will be like, well, it's my favorite episode because it's just such a reveal and it's so well done. But when it hits you real hard like this, that's kind of the last thing you want to hear. So please bear that in mind in the comments because this was very real. And whoo, buddy. Not enough booze in the cup. I should have broke out wine chan, but I've got work tomorrow and I didn't want a hangover. Damn. So yeah, so we ditched the fairy tale background because this is real now. This is not a fairy tale. And Akio being a predator and being someone that is grooming and preying upon Utena is real. And this is kind of the culmination of all that. So on the plus side, it can't get any worse. Maybe not. Maybe it can't get any worse. Also, it was a recap episode, which on the one hand, there was a part of me going through this episode that as we kept getting more and more confirmation of what was going on, I was like, oh, I'm glad this is a recap episode so I don't have to sit here and dread. But then when it finally all happened, I was like, this is as nightmarish and I can't go anywhere. I'm forced to watch this. So anyway, but so we go through everything. At this point, is Akio the prince? You know, is he the prince? At this point, we're not sure, but as far as Utena is concerned, she is convinced that maybe, or yeah, he is. And now the very ending of that line makes all the more sense where they say, is it such a good idea for her to become a prince? The answer is no. At least not by the definition of what they ascribe as princes in this series. In this series, princes are predators. They prey upon your desires, they prey upon who you are as individuals, and they use you. And it's not something you should aspire to be. And the sad thing is Utena never really got that. Her version of a prince is what we imagine from a fairy tale. And she was just trying to be this strong character. And I think the worst part about it is that Utena has been such a strong character throughout the story. So I didn't expect her to let it just happen. But all of the things that are set up in this episode, she really doesn't have a choice. And she really is pushed into a corner where someone could say, well, she could have said no, but really, honestly, that's not how these scenarios work, right? And it's not so easy to just be like, oh, that I won't let that happen. And we've seen that with Anthe. Anthe has always been interesting because we don't know how old Anthe and Akio are. We don't know if they're actually adults. We don't know how old Anthe is. And Anthe has magical properties to her. She can shapeshift. She can do all these things. So because she's the Rose Bride, we think that there's an added like mysticism or magic to her. So it kind of takes away, at least for me, I've been like, well, this thing that's happening to Anthe is awful and I hate it for her, but she has these magical powers. Why doesn't she just stand up to Akio? Utena doesn't have magical powers, not without Anthe. And she's a 14-year-old girl that gets raped by this man. And it's just horrifying and very relatable and not glamorous. And everything is set up in such a realistic way that my stomach was in knots the entire time. I felt sick the entire time. Because at the beginning, when you see the Ferris wheel and everything in the setup, you think, well, what is going on? You know, what is happening? And then we go immediately to Anthe looking at the stars. And I'm not going to say what all the constellations are. I'm going to let you all comment about that down below instead of how much you loved this episode, because I have a feeling there's going to be people that say that they loved this episode, because whenever there was like hard-hitting stuff like this in Berserk, people be like, I love this volume. And I was like, I just cried my eyes out. You know? But I empathize with Anthe so much. Like last episode, I was really aggravated with her because of, you know, what was going on and her not doing anything. And here I feel horrible for Anthe because not only did Anthe procure the roses to give to Akio to take with Utena to deliver, not only did she get those roses together, she knew damn well what was going to happen. And she couldn't do anything about it, which is the part that is so frustrating to me. Because I'm like, I want Anthe to be able to save Utena like Utena has saved her, but Anthe can't. And so it's so horrible because I just want Anthe to be able to be with Utena and to help her. And for Anthe to have to stand by And for Anthony's coping mechanism to be like, she's like, because Akio was like, oh, you could go out and go look at the stars. She's like, I don't want to look at reality right now because the reality is something that she doesn't want to have to bear. And damn, it sucks a lot. But I could relate a lot to Anthony in this moment and feel really bad for her because she's like, I'd rather just have this alternative reality than face the one that exists. My thing is, how is Anthony and Utena supposed to look at each other anymore? How are they supposed to talk to each other? How could they? How could Anthony, like, it feels like such a betrayal because it felt like such a betrayal and it was so hard to watch because it's like Anthony literally loves her and Utena and Anthony have such a relationship, and for Utena to keep bringing up Anthony, and we'll talk about it, but it feels like such a betrayal, and it's like, how are they supposed to look at each other? And I'm like, are they supposed to bond from being raped by this man and kill him together? Can we have the chicks playing Earl Has to Die? Can we do that? Can we say because Akio had to die and then go from there? Can we do that? He's so disgusting. I hate it so much. The prince who runs through the night. Yeah, running through the night being a metaphor for him having sex with everything that moves is pretty on the nose. So the moment we had her talking to him on the phone, saying that she was looking at the stars and then saying, did you get tonight's roses? And then we cut to the phone with the lamp. Oh, whoops, turn that off. And saying, I can't believe how much fun I had today. The moment we saw the roses on the table and we saw they were red and pink, which are Akio and Utena's colors, which oddly enough, neither of them are white. So if that was the prince's colors, there you go. But him taking Utena on a date. The worst part is Utena's outfit's great. That's the worst part about it, the red and white stripes. But her wearing a dress, which is the most feminine thing she's wore, and lipstick, looking mature, you know, it felt like Utena didn't feel like herself at all in this episode. She felt like she was performative as to what Akio would want. You know, she has the red purse and the red striped dress, which is connected to his character's colors. And the fact that they go to the fact that the first thing of the matter is he took her in a car ride to the fair and then to a hotel. And the moment we saw this, I was like, fuck, she's with him in the hotel. And that's what, and I was like, please don't let this lead to what I think it's going to lead to. And then it did. But she was in a car with him. She's 14. She can't drive. So the first act of the matter is you've taken away her option of leaving. You've taken away her option of escape. And that is such a predatory move to do. And it happens to so many women where they get in situations. Where they can't go anywhere. Anyway. So, and she's like, well, I don't remember the last time I enjoyed myself this much. But the thing about her saying that is she's not looking directly at the camera as she says that. She's looking away out the window. And she's doing all of these stretches and exercises, which if you recall from the Mikage arc, whenever Utena is nervous or doesn't understand something, or whenever she's, you know, kind of like unsure, she starts getting fidgety and doing exercises. So there's a way of interpreting all of this without it just coming out and saying it, that there's a way they interpret it where she's literally saying, I don't want to be here and I'm nervous. And the fact that we get this from Akio's perspective the entire time as the predator, he says nothing the entire episode. While they're in the hotel room, he says nothing to assuage her fears. He says nothing to make her feel any remote sense of comfort. Everything, the silence from his end is to make us understand more and more that he is a predator and that he is taking advantage of her and that he is going to do something awful to her. And she slowly gets more and more into the realization of that. And it's just him breaking down her entire spirit, and it's the most mind-numbing, horrible thing in the world. But anyway, and so then she's like, I wish that Himamiya could have come with us. Being left by herself, she couldn't have had this much fun. And I'm glad that Utena at least is thinking of Himamiya, but I hate that she had to leave him there. And then she does the slow turn, right? She's like, I wonder, do you know what I wonder? Yeah. So we have the thing stuck on, the channel stuck between 9 and 12, right? Where we have the channel stuck at 9. But I hated that. So the Shadow Girls are on the radio. The Shadow Girls get to be on the radio, which is so interesting because usually they just talk to us, the audience. But here they're on a radio show talking to a bunch of people. And the radio show I'm familiar with because of Sailor Moon, because there was a lot of like in the 90s, there were a lot of like late night talk shows where the first thing I honestly really thought of Japanese culture was their talk shows, because we didn't really have that in the US, right? In the 90s, but they have the talk shows where girls would call in and then hear like somebody answer questions and do that. And that felt like such a Japanese thing. But they talk about, to all the listeners out there, the beautiful autumn constellations are twinkling in the sky, a great night for couples to glimpse eternity. Which eternity to me signifies like adulthood. It signifies that passage from childhood into adulthood. And, I didn't want to have to go through that. And of course, as soon as we just saw his perspective in the car, I'm like, she's in the car with him. Of course she is. So they talk about that, what is eternity? That tease an eternal mystery. And so the end of the world is the pen name that they give a call to. And also, what a sign of the times, a car phone. Those of you that were born before 1999 are probably like, what the fudge is a car phone? But it was a thing. It seems as impractical as you think it is. But yeah, like the fact that you could answer a landline in your car, it, of course, again, you can see why it's very impractical. But the fact also is interesting is they say he sounds sexy. So in this moment, there's almost a recognizing of the fact that he is someone we should watch out for. But they can see it like we see it as the audience from an outside perspective, whereas people that are inside that world, you don't always see it, which again, when people are assaulted and people are like, well, why didn't you just recognize the warning signs? Well, a lot of times you don't. Because of situations like that, right? You can't see those warning signs once you're in that world. So they ask what he does for a living. He says he runs a school, but he has a side job as well. And the side job is apparently raping people. Why not? And they're like, it'll work out as long as no one catches me. Well, at this point, everyone's caught him because everybody's been in the sex car at this point. So now it's a question of, is Utena going to do anything about this, or is she just going to keep getting strung along by him? And when is Anthe going to reach a breaking point, and is Anthe going to do anything? And is anybody else in the school going to do anything, right? And so they say multiple choice. Which of the following is eternal? So we have what is eternal, right? So the eternal thing is either a diamond, which never breaks, supposedly. A beautiful memory, which is tied to what's been happening in this entire show. Or they said canned peaches. Wasn't canned peaches the other thing? I mean, they come in a can. They were put there by a man down by the lakeside, according to the presidents of the United States. But peaches that are canned, they also can ward off certain kinds of snakes or reptiles in holes. So if you put them with onions. And he says, well, it would have to be, and then Anthe interrupts the call, right? Or he gets interrupted with the call, and then Az says he has to go work with his side job, which is the whole sex car arc. If the sex car arc ends with this episode, it will be too soon. But also we get the line on the road, the strip in the road says the word stop over and over again. And the word stop is also the last thing that is shown before he has intercourse with Utena, which to me was kind of like the nail in the coffin that she didn't want him to do that. But at that point, she didn't know how to respond, or she felt powerless to stop him. And so there we are. So we got the stuff with Saionji. got that duel there. We got introduced to Akio, that is basically the devil. And we get the idea that Akio is the prince that supposedly has shown Utena and saved her. And so then Sayonji said, and then Utena said, if you really love Himamiya, look at it from her point of view, which is something that Utena has kind of neglected Anthy this time. And she's been neglecting Anthy because of Akio's actions. And Sayonji says, I did consider her feelings, but then he said she has no will of her own, which we as the audience know is not true, because she is doing things and does show the signs of a will, but she's been pushed into a corner just like Utena has been. So we go back to the hotel room, and there are some tea there. There's some napkins. There's tissues there. She's watching TV, and then we have the roses still there. But again, she's distracting herself and talking about how the challenger, the world champs fight was superb tonight. And the king of imposters has been on top for 8 weeks now. 8 weeks now! So, we're on episode 33, 32, 31, 30, 29, 28, 27, 26, 25. Episode 25 was right about the time that the Mikage arc ended, right? Right? The Mikage arc ended around episodes 23 or 24, right? So that signals that this entire sex car arc has been the king of imposters, which is Akio. And then it says just 4 more wins, and he goes on to challenge. So 4 more wins. If you're implying that we have 4 more episodes of this bitch and this nonsense, because that would be 34, 35, 36, 37. God, if that's going to be before we get to 38 and 39, the climax of this series, show, why would you do that to us? Why would you make us suffer like that? Why would you do that? For the glory of Grand Champion Imposter King. If we have to get Akio versus like Anthy or Utena even, or somebody in episode 37, we'll see. But it's also something else that's really unnerving about all of the scenes with Utena in the hotel room is that there's a lot of sexualizing of her. Like, definitely on the bed with her hair, because it looks like Anthy when she's assaulted. Definitely those moments. But like her stretching and her like seeing it voyeuristically from his perspective and seeing how how he like looks at her and how her body is sexualized, it's disturbing to the highest degree, right? But she's like, man, and then she sits there and like tries to she's like, you know, think he'll get to be champs. Like, she keeps on distracting by doing various things to try to like, she's like, I wish I could compete for it. And then, yeah, all of the moves that she does, I mean, they're all sexualized, right? Even down to the yoga pose. And then we have the whole thing with Mickey and Kozu, which in hindsight, like I said in the reaction, is probably my least favorite of the episodes. Not because it's bad necessarily, but because Mickey's so innocent and I want to protect him at all costs, kind of like with Utena. But I did think that I kept wanting more out of their episodes. And then the whole thing with Anthy as the alternative mom is just so freaking weird. But again, it's just a really sad episode. So yeah, then then we have him in the car and then him keep driving. And then we have her purse and everything in the drawer that she shuts. And then she has on the kimono and everything like she's taking a shower. But even her with the kimono and getting out of the shower, the way that her head is down and the way her head is bowed and that she's still in the room with him, like you can tell she feels uncomfortable. But again, he's preyed upon her and made it to where he's, you know, adhered and catered to her, and she's convinced herself that she likes him and that he likes her. And even though she knows this is wrong, he's facilitating it. And it's just classic predatory behavior. It's how women get into these scenarios because it's this planned out, mediated thing. And it's absolutely terrifying. And the fact she doesn't look happy, like at any point in this episode, she doesn't look happy, right? And she's talking about a teacher, you know, and she's trying to like distract saying, you know, this teacher's called an alumni. I'm not clear why they call her an alum. And, everyone used to call her the teacup. And before that, she's just rattling nonsense. And so the alum with the teacup, I wonder if that's the teacher or the woman that was with Mikage. I wonder if that's her, maybe, if it's a reference back to that. And there's lots of moments of silence in this episode, which are just really hard. And even the jazz intermission is awful. So then you can tell time passes because they put the roses in the vase, and then, which is maybe where they were originally supposed to be delivered. And then it shows them eating like the sushi and stuff that's sitting there and the hot pot. And she's still like, you can tell she's distracting herself by doing all of the exercises and saying, oh, I left the bread out from this morning. And like, I wonder if him and Mia put it away in the refrigerator, which honestly, that in itself to me was like kind of a clue of Utena being like, oh, we left the bread out. Maybe we should contact him and Mia, or maybe we should go back and leave, because we don't want to leave it out or anything. Like, it was just warning signs of her not wanting to be there. She's like, if you don't put it back in the plastic bag, it'll start to smell. Like, it's all of these scenarios of ways Utena wants to not be there. And she's still stuck there. And then, yeah, and Akio just in silence, just like that whole car ride is just him praying and driving closer and closer to the point, right? And even with Anthe there, like looking more suggestive now that we look back on that scene, Mickey didn't do anything to her, right? Which mad respect for Mickey. So now they talk about the next multiple choice question. Saying, multiple choice, which of the following is a miracle? Which of the following is a miracle? And then 1, Edison's inventions, which is like the light bulb. Edison's inventions. 2, meeting a prince. Or 3, what was the canned thing that they said? I wanted to look that up, actually. Which was a canned coelacanth. Canned coelacanth. I want to look that up because I didn't know what that was. And I was like, what exactly is this? This is weird. So, coelacanth is an animal. Oh, it's an ancient group of lobe-finned fish. A can of ancient tuna, basically. Ancient fish. Okay. So, I mean, obviously, then we don't get a third multiple choice question, which is the cruelty of the show in full force, right? The cruelty of the show in full force is not getting the final multiple choice question because it's not. But we have 3 different things here. We have 1 that are, what people think of as general answers to the question, whereas something eternal, a diamond. Diamonds are forever. That's, a connotation what we do. And then a miracle be Edison's inventions, like the light bulb. So those are like common things that we would think to answer with it. The second answer for both parts are very tuned to this series. Like, oh, what's something eternal? A beautiful memory. Or something eternal, or a miracle is meeting a prince. But we've come to know throughout these series that both of these are kind of lies. That through all the duels, that the memories, the beautiful memories, they're beautiful memories, but just because they're eternal doesn't mean that they grant you eternity. That's a lie. And then we know that a miracle meeting a prince, well, of all the princes we've met so far, that's turned out to be a lie as well. And so then the final answer, eternal canned peaches. Peaches have a sexual connotation with them automatically. And so does fish. Both of them have connotations that are tied to women. So, like, I've talked about Drag Race in the opening, but, I mean, peaches have been synonymous with, vaginas for many, 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 many moons. And then from watching Drag Race, when people are like, oh, they're fishy, they're talking about, like, women, right? So that seems very deliberate by the show in itself. I mean, it's like miracles, a miraculous power. And then we go back. It's like Akio is not going to reveal his tricks to us, the audience. He's not going to reveal the trick. He's not going to reveal the answer to us. And then we get Ruka's whole backstory, which honestly, I would go back to episode 29 in a heartbeat. The episode's probably been one of my favorites in this. So then we have them playing, I don't think it's Go, but it seems like a game. But when the game starts, there's two different ones, right? There's like an X, almost like a cross for Utena, who's the white piece, and then Akio's the black piece, of course, and his seems more like a snake. But there are 7 pieces for Utena on the board, and there are 6 pieces for Akio, which is interesting. And so this whole conversation, she's talking about, I'm messing up my measurements, and saying, recently I cooked the wrong amount of macaroni and I ended up filling a huge pot with it. And so it's worse when you do that with seasonings. And also it's weird because Utena's never cooked before. So like her talking about like things like cooking and things like there are things that she doesn't normally talk about. So again, it's like her trying to just divert the conversation any way possible. And that stupid bed in the background in this scene is like, oh, they're gonna do this. That's where this is headed, and the show is just telling us that's where it's going. And she's like, if you don't watch it, you'll add too much and the meal's ruined. Then we see there's 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, and she has a bunch of other pieces on there. So there's even more pieces of hers on the board. And you'll turn a meal for 3 into a meal for 10. And you can't undo it once it's done. You can tell yourself that you'll save it for later, for hamburgers or lunches or something. But you can't do it with stew, though. And then like seeing her look up at him again with like the lipstick and stuff on, it's just, oh, I hate it so much. It never seems to taste right. And then she looks back down and she's like, why is that? And she's like, and now I'm losing, and the board is all black, like as if Akio's winning this, and there's just the 2 of them left on the board. Nope. So we go back to Shiori and Ruka and all of that. We get that moment there, and then from there, with Shiori and the rain and all of that, we go back to her turning out the lights. And I wish it could have ended there, but that's not what ends up happening. Because she turns over to look at him. Like there's a light there where we can see her. And the fact that she looks over at him and there's that silence, I hate it, because you know what's coming. You know it's about to happen. And there's no sound. And then she looks up, and there's no sound in that scene where she looks at him. And we, the audience, are begging. Every part of us is like, if you're a decent human being, just go to sleep and let her be. And that's all you have to do. But that's not what he came here to do. And then there's the overture, the dub of miracles happen every day. We just don't notice them. And so that's the thing. Like, you know, we just don't notice the miracles because they're commonplace. They happen every day, which is like such a funny thing to say when you're running this entire duel system on the fact that miracles are a rarity, when in reality, you're like, that's actually bullshit. And like, we can tell you're smart, but could you answer the question? And he says, answer. He's not going to do that. So then, like, she's asleep there, and then she sees him above her and immediately gets uncomfortable. And you can tell she's like, her eyes look very unsettled. And this entire scene, the moment she opened her eyes and saw him and she looked uncomfortable, I was like, she doesn't want to be here. And she doesn't want this to happen. Because she's like, well, I can't believe we played around. And she keeps looking elsewhere, like somewhere else. She's like, you know, I have to make my lunch for tomorrow as soon as we get back. Like, she's looking around uncomfortably, like she does not want to be there. And she's like, well, you know, what could I do? And the whole time this is happening, I'm like, is he doing anything sexual to her? And the answer is yes. Yep. The answer is yes, because she's talking about what she could make with her lunch and what she could end up doing. And you can tell that he's violating her in this moment. And she's like, I can't think of anything else. And everything is from his perspective. And she's like, what do you think I should make? And he doesn't answer. And then you can tell in that moment when he rapes her, because of just the sounds and what's happening. Like, you can tell what's happening in that moment. And the fact that she looks uncomfortable is the moment that it happens. Yeah. and what he's doing to her, like, you know. But he doesn't tell her what is eternity and says stop. Yep. And then we have the conversation with Anthe. And he says, did you get tonight's roses? And then we see her. Now, I'm assuming this is after all this happens. When she opens her eyes and looks back at him. Is after all this. Because she doesn't look happy at all in that moment. And then he looks back at the road. And he says, the stars tonight were beautiful, weren't they? But what is she supposed to do from here? Like, what now? Like, what was the point now? Because, you know, she looks even much older, like that loss of innocence. Like her breasts are more pronounced. She like looks more angular. And then she looks back like they're leaving where the fair was. And she said, I never expected we'd end up doing what we did. All I came to do today was deliver roses. So then the question is, well, what do they do now? Like, where does Anthe go from here? Like, where do we go to from here? What do we do? Where does her character go to? What is she going to tell Anthe? What is Akio's point now that he's gotten what he's wanted out of her? Is he just going to ditch her and leave? Is that specialness she had gone? And so now he's just going to ditch her and go find somebody else? Like, what? I think that's the hardest part. And at the very end, when she's so passive about it, when she's like, I can't believe we did what we did. And I'm like, I could see somebody saying, well, she doesn't think it's such a big deal. And I'm like, no. No, she thinks it's a very big deal. Because I know when what happened to me happened, I was doing really good. I know that the next day, because I was around my friends after that, and I couldn't talk about it. I couldn't really even say what had happened, and I couldn't really, my only way to process it was to just disassociate and just like listen to whatever else someone else was saying and just go with it. But it was one of those things where you just felt so horrible, but you didn't really know what to do, and you didn't really know what to say. And I get where she's coming from in that the only thing you can do in that moment, especially if you didn't want it to happen, is to try to distance yourself from it. Because again, she's still in the car with him and he's not making a big deal out of it. So she's like, if I make a big deal out of it, what happens? And so then the question is, I don't want Utena to change as a character, but it's like that innocence is gone. And so she has to change. But I don't want her to be complacent with him. I want her to mother truck and throw him in front of a semi. So, this episode was rough. I normally have a lot to say about this episode, but I don't think for my health I do. I'm very concerned for what Utena is going to do moving forward and what her and Akio's relationship is and what her and Anthe's relationship is. And I just if you're going to comment, please don't be like, this is the best episode of the series and I love it so much. I can't read those comments. Moderators don't let me read those comments unless there's something of amazing value in them. I can't, because, and I know people aren't praising it, but it sometimes feels like they are. And when it is an episode about an assault that you relate very well to, I will concede that it is powerful and it is horrifying, and but it's something that I didn't need to unpack. I've unpacked it for a while. It just hits really close to home. So yeah, that's all I got this week. I would like to say it can't get any worse than this, but it definitely could get worse than this, because Anthe could get separated from Utena and be sent away and never see Utena again. And I don't want that to happen. So I don't know what's going to happen next week, but we'll see, won't we? So in the meantime, I hope you all have a wonderful week. Please stay safe, take care, and I'll be back real soon with more Revolutionary Girl Utena. Bye.